Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker just launched in theaters around the world. This video is going to contain spoilers for The Rise of Skywalker. I went and saw a midnight screening in a packed theater and went in not really knowing what to expect. How are they possibly going to wrap up the Skywalker saga in less than 2.5 hours? It really doesn't seem like enough time, like at all enough time, but the movie surprised me in ways I wasn't expecting, both positive and negative. Hey everyone, it's Andrew, and today I'm going to share some of my thoughts about The Rise of Skywalker and compare it to some of the other Star Wars films in the saga released over the past 40 odd years, which is insane that these films have been going for that long. This will basically be an opinion video of the film, which is something I don't normally do, but here we are. As is the case every time a new Star Wars film gets released, there seems to be this YouTube culture around picking on everything the film did wrong and creating controversy and drama about the film that really isn't all that big a deal. I'm really not a fan of these types of videos and really think they create a negative vibe on YouTube. And I feel like that wave of crap is just around the corner. So before that happens and becomes just this mega storm, I wanted to discuss some key parts of The Rise of Skywalker and share both positive and negative opinions. I think it's quite interesting looking at all three films in the new sequel trilogy and realizing how different they are from one another. The Force Awakens was basically a reboot of Star Wars with some J.J. Abrams cinematic tropes. The Last Jedi was a departure from what we know as Star Wars, with some interesting but questionable stylistic and narrative choices. And this new film, The Rise of Skywalker, is its own thing in itself. But just before I start talking about The Rise of Skywalker, I feel like it's important to mention my opinion of The Last Jedi, seeing as though so many people have been vocal about that film when it came out. Even to this day, still people making videos about The Last Jedi. It's a controversial Star Wars film that I think will continue to divide Star Wars fans long into the future. But honestly, when it first came out, I really enjoyed it and thought it definitely took you on a new, unique journey in the Star Wars universe. But there were some obvious flaws. The whole Finn and Rose subplot really confused me and just was unnecessary, as well as the suggestion that the Resistance and First Order get their weapons from the same place or are sold to them by the same people. This doesn't make sense to me at all. X-Wings generally beat TIE fighters, right? So why would the First Order buy TIE fighters when they can buy X-Wings? And why do they have incredibly advanced ships and sleek-looking heavy artillery when the Resistance have all these random scrappy ships, if both are available to each side? Wouldn't the Resistance also be able to buy ship schematics and access codes to the Star Destroyers, or even get their own Star Destroyers? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. And the whole Luke being crazy thing when he's drinking alien milk. The only way I can make sense of this is to argue that he had PTSD from what happened when his new Jedi Order fell to pieces and he was scarred from everything else he'd seen over the years. He was just a simple farmer from the desert, right? Similar to Anakin, all this stuff must have blown his mind. Sees his mentor and grandfather figure get sliced by this creepy giant man in a black suit. It all must have been too much, and that's why he's acting all strange and hiding out on Arc 2 with the Porgs. But I love the way they killed Snoke. That whole scene was a real surprise, and I really enjoyed the Rey and Kylo connectedness with the Force and some of the scenes they shared. The whole shirtless thing was pretty funny though, some real sexual tension going on here. Or for some reason Adam Driver wanted to do a shirtless scene, I don't know. But anyway, that was The Last Jedi, the Porg Fest. So, The Rise of Skywalker. I'm going to start by saying The Rise of Skywalker is a film that invents new rules, then immediately breaks them. It's a film that takes a risk, then immediately doubles back on that risk and says, no, that's not actually what happened, this is what happened. And for me, this was its biggest flaw. Right from the beginning, the fact it was revealed in the opening credits that Palpatine was alive and back in the picture was kind of cheap. Why not show the reaction to this? Why not show this actually happening? Why not open the movie with Rey training on the jungle planet and Leia and the Resistance pick up a signal of Palpatine's voice broadcasting across the galaxy that he's going to destroy the Resistance and the Jedi? That could have been a real shock right at the beginning. The opening of the film really departed from the traditional first scene of a Star Wars film, where after the opening crawl, the camera pans to reveal a ship or a planet and stays in that scene. Instead, The Rise of Skywalker cuts straight down to a slow motion close-up of Kylo killing warriors guarding the Sith Wayfinder. Then we kind of go into a quick cut montage sequence of him traveling to Exegol, the Sith planet in the unknown regions where Palpatine is in hiding. I didn't necessarily mind that this whole opening sequence was different, but definitely thought it was rushed finding out Palpatine is alive in the opening crawl. Like, I I feel like that's a pretty big event. Palpatine is alive, and it's like 4 words in the text. Even though we heard his voice in the trailers, this could have been a well-placed plot twist right from the start and would have been especially engaging seeing the Resistance react with fear and disappointment that the Sith Lord they spent so long trying to destroy is back. Things certainly move very quickly in The Rise of Skywalker. Before we know it, the main cast are off on the adventure. Let's jump to Pisana, where Rey, Poe, Finn, Chewie, and the gang are looking for the Sith artifact that will lead them to Exegol. There's one thing I want to mention here, that sweeping helicopter shot of the Knights of Ren standing on the edge of a cliff looking out over the desert. I thought this was hilarious. Why are they all standing on the cliff like that? This shot is literally in the film just to sell toys and make them look like badasses. Very dramatic, but I loved it. It gave me a good laugh. So I'm going to keep jumping through the film and discuss a few significant moments. I want to talk about that force power Rey suddenly got. Grabbing a ship out of the sky with the force and stopping it from taking off. Now I have no problem at all with new Star Wars films inventing new force powers. This is something that's happened in every Star Wars film to date, I'm pretty sure. A New Hope introduced the Force and its mythos. Empire Strikes Back was really into levitating objects and lifting up rocks. Return of the Jedi gave us Force lightning. The Phantom Menace gave us midi-chlorians. You know what I mean. There's an ongoing theme here. But come on, man. Grabbing a ship out of the sky. This is the Force Unleashed Starkiller territory we're getting into here. The Force Unleashed games were all about ridiculous, over-the-top force powers, which when you look back at now, seem kind of ridiculous. Hence why this game and its story are no longer canon, since Disney took over. And yes, even if Rey is who she is, and this moment is epic, is it stepping too far into the far-fetched? I'm not sure. Okay, and then when we thought Chewie died because Rey shot Force lightning at the ship and it exploded, I was honestly like, great, that's really cool. That's a really cool plot move. Now she has a reason to feel guilty, to feel like she's losing control of her power. There's actual weight behind her feelings because she's just accidentally killed Chewie. Now she has to live with that. But then they're like, oh, Chewie wasn't actually on that ship that exploded. There was another ship with Chewie on it that we haven't showed you yet. Now, as far as I can remember, I only saw one ship on the ground. Obviously, I wasn't looking for the second one. I'll probably have to go back and watch and see if there was a second one in this scene. They had to have put it there somewhere, right? They just didn't focus on it. And as sad as it is if Chewie were to die, his death gives purpose to the plot and to Rey's character. I would have been happy with that death for Chewie. It felt justified for the sake of Rey's character development. But they went back on it, so that didn't happen. The same goes for C-3PO's memory. First, the film tells you his memory is going to be wiped to retrieve the Sith translation from his internal drive, and 3PO even says R2-D2 won't have a backup because of his unreliability. But then, of course, after 3PO's lost his memory and the two of them reunite, R2 immediately reinstalls his memory. The film makes a decision, takes you in that direction, then doubles back on it, which makes it feel like there's no meaning to any of the actions of the characters. There's no consequences. The Rise of Skywalker is afraid to take risks, as if already protecting unwritten future Star Wars projects that it might want to make. Because what if they want to use Chewie again in another film or a TV show? Well, they can't use him if he's dead, right? Or what if they want 3PO to remember something? They wouldn't have been able to. But these are narrative decisions that lead to compelling storytelling, not doubling back on everything you say a few minutes later. Rise of Skywalker needed to make more decisions and stick with them. It needed to take more risks. And speaking of new force powers, how did Palpatine create an entire new army? Where did the Final Order come from? Are they a manifestation of his force powers and the Sith? Or was he recruiting another secret army, building Star Destroyers and doing all this in the background as a contingency plan? Where did all this come from? Again, this felt cheap, like the writers just wrote a new army into the script. Oh, we need a new army, so we're gonna just write one, basically. It's like Snoke all over again. And if the army was a creation of the Force, again, this is even beyond Starkiller Force Unleashed territory in terms of ridiculously overpowered force powers. Sith Troopers look real cool though. I'm a huge fan of the Sith Troopers. How can we make Stormtroopers look even cooler? How about we paint them red? Genius. Love the Sith Troopers. I honestly wish they got more screen time. Felt like that was a bit lacking. It was just You know, especially because they're such a big deal in Battlefront 2, and this really didn't have all that many Sith troopers, especially up close. You didn't really see them too much. And I also loved how they revealed Palpatine created Snoke using the Force, just because he needed someone to rule the First Order. Snoke's character always bothered me because, again, it felt like he just came out of nowhere, like he was just written into the script for the sake of needing a villain. I made a video all about this a couple years back. You can go watch it in the top right corner right now. So on to Rey and her being revealed as the granddaughter of Palpatine. Still not sure how I feel about this. I haven't really decided if this was a good decision one way or the other. Also, we don't really yet know how Palpatine had a child and whether there was a wife or a partner involved, who knows. But we do know they weren't following in his footsteps and wanted to protect Rey from Palpatine. I mean, yes, it does explain her ridiculous force powers and her ability to keep learning new powers with very minimal training, but she could have just been a nobody that was hypersensitive to the Force. Her being a Palpatine doesn't really highlight the whole idea that anyone can have the Force, and the Force isn't necessarily passed on through birth. During the times of the Republic and Jedi Order, the Jedi would find Force-sensitive children throughout the galaxy to train as Jedi from a young age. Closeness to the Force isn't necessarily hereditary, but then again, I guess it can be. Just as the Skywalkers all have the Force, so too do the Palpatines. But I'm still on the fence with this one. One important scene I really did like and I felt was a really great moment was Kylo's vision of Han. This was a really heartfelt moment, and I really liked the callbacks to when Kylo killed Han. They were standing on a similar narrow bridge. Kylo said a few lines he said in The Force Awakens in this movie. Great to see Harrison Ford back in action also. I was really hoping he'd make an appearance in this film, and there he was. Rey healing Kylo, also great intimate moment. This I felt like was a reasonable new Force power. And Leia's death I think was handled really gracefully based on the footage they already had. It was as if she used her last breath to reach out to Kylo and turn him back to the light. I loved that. Back to Ben Solo. And I loved Kylo throwing his lightsaber into the ocean also. Great moment and a great turning point in this character arc. Now I also want to talk about Palpatine and how I think he's nothing like the Palpatine we see in the prequels and Return of the Jedi. Obviously he's quite incapacitated in terms of movement and mobility, but his screen presence is also quite different in this film. And a huge part of that is due to the way they decided to depict him in this film. The Palpatine in the prequels and Return of the Jedi is a likable evil. He has personality, has stage presence, he's feared, and every time he's in a scene there's a dark undertone, a mood is set. You basically know he's a bad guy and you feel that. And I think this all comes from a number of things. His eyes, his facial expressions, his movement and posture, and his calm yet evil voice. It's all these things combined that make him such a great character. The Rise of Skywalker, I felt missed the mark on these. First, because for most of the film, he's quite obscured. You never really get a good look at his face. Also, his eyes, the lack of pupils, take away so much personality from the character. You don't feel his gaze, and although Exegol is a dark, scary place, I don't feel scared. I think it's kind of corny. He's attached to the ceiling by a giant life support system. I don't even know it's Ian McDiarmid, the Palpatine actor, acting that. I know it's his voice, but it doesn't look anything like Palpatine. His face is completely different. He doesn't have the posture he has in the other films. His movement is gone. The only thing left, really, is the voice. And for me personally, that wasn't enough to make him feel like Palpatine. Honestly, he felt too much like Snoke. And this was probably the biggest letdown of this film for me. The fact Palpatine didn't feel like Palpatine. I don't know if you guys agree with that. Anyway, I don't understand why Rey as well, when she was facing Palpatine and he was urging her to strike him down so she'd become a Sith, why didn't she just cut the life support ceiling arm so he'd just flop down to the floor and like slam on the floor or be crushed? It's comical. And who are all these black Sith in the background? Were they like souls of every past Sith? They felt like spectators in the stadium. I guess Exegol is the Sith planet, but I don't remember these being explained in the film, so it felt kind of strange them being there. At every moment I was waiting for them to all swarm down into the middle and swarm Rey and Kylo, but that never happened. They just were in the background as background, I guess. They're like Sith souls just hanging out, watching Palpatine hang from the ceiling. That's all they do all day. Now, I want to talk about the ending. First up, I really didn't see the Rey and Kylo kiss coming, and I think literally everyone in the cinema all cringed at the same time time when this happened. The person sitting next to me even put his face in his hands and covered his eyes. And when they were looking at each other, I was like, oh, please don't, and then they did. But I don't understand how they're in love. Where did that come from? Felt kind of forced and like they were just going for a Disney moment. It's like Rey's becoming a Disney princess and she has to kiss someone at the end. I don't know. Then Kylo's death. Why did Kylo have to die? He used his last Force energy to bring Rey back to life, but this was too much for him, and I guess it used up all his life force and he died. For me personally, the standout of this film was Adam Driver's performance as Kylo Ren and Ben Solo. Every scene he was in was compelling. I loved watching his action scenes, his movement, facial expressions, and delivery of dialogue was the best in the film. You really feel everything Kylo does, and I found myself wanting more and more screen time for him, and I was really disappointed when he died. Of all the characters who could have lived, he was the one I wanted to survive based on his journey to the dark side and coming full circle with the Force. Even though just before his death he returned to the light and seemed to be at peace with that, I would have loved for him to live on with Rey, accepting his past and learning to live with that, but making a decision towards who he was going to be in the future. Now, I want to bring something up that's been a key idea surrounding the Force throughout the films. Balance. So many of the films mention bringing balance to the Force. To me, balance means there are either both Jedi and Sith or neither. Balance in the Force in that there is either the two sides or nothing left to fight and no conflict and no power. Which is why I'm so confused about Rey's lightsaber at the end. If she defeated the Sith and the entire Final Order and they just, all the Star Destroyers in the galaxy for some reason just fell to pieces, they're like a hive mind, then why does she even need a lightsaber? And where did she get the new one from? She just pulled it up from the bottom of the frame in the shot and it was like, what? Where did that come from? Came out of nowhere. And why is it yellow? Is it because she's now similar to a sentinel, a keeper of the Jedi? Are these questions that are even going to be answered? I felt like the ending still left too many questions unanswered. I feel like by bringing Rey back to life, Ben should have just lost the power to use the Force, as should have Rey. That way balance is restored. Neither of them have the Force and they can live a peaceful life together, perhaps back on Tatooine, start up the moisture farm again, and yeah, bury the lightsabers. And the whole Rey Skywalker thing, I didn't mind. I get she's trying to find a sense of identity and was accepted into the Skywalker family with Luke and Leia, but this scene with Luke and Leia's Force ghost in the background urging her to say that her last name is Skywalker just felt a little cringy. I feel like this could have been done a little differently. I wanted a scene where there was like every Force ghost Jedi just all standing there, like 100 Jedi just all standing there, like Mace Windu and, Yoda and Anakin and Obi-Wan, just all there. That would have been my perfect ending. But it was nice realizing the entire sequel trilogy came full circle with this ending, as at the center of this trilogy is Rey searching for her identity. Of course she became a Skywalker. Overall, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker I think wasn't the film a lot of us wanted, but regardless of that, the story lives on. This is the direction they decided to take, and I can acknowledge and understand why they made the choices they made. And I can accept that, even if they're not the choices lots of us would have liked them to make. So these have been my thoughts, so now I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film. Did you like it? What do you think of Palpatine and of the ending? What were your favorite moments? Did you like the fact Rey and Kylo got together? Did you like the film as a whole? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this kind of video, please let me know also, because I don't normally make these kinds of videos that aren't about Star Wars games, so this is something a little different for me. I had opinions I wanted to share. And if you want more of that, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Discord for more Star Wars stuff. I've been posting a few other thoughts and opinions on The Rise of Skywalker and the updates for Battlefront 2 on those platforms. And thanks for watching this. My name's Andrew. I'll catch you soon.
Stay bombastic.